do those interviews on prompt. Joining us now here to talk about this is New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Does FEMA have this money or not? I mean, we talk about whether or not it's coming from one pot, two pots. Is it all one big pot that's delegated money? Can you clear that up for us?
Well, the day before the storm hit, Helene hit, Congress did approve $20 billion for FEMA. Speaker Johnson made that very clear. So there is money there, and I think the vice president just admitted it, right? That there is money there, they have the resources. The thing is, they always want more money, and the reason why they're asking for more money here is because they've been misspending FEMA funds, using it to house and transport migrants, people who have come over into the country illegally, and they're transporting them all over, including our city, and then trying to help cities like ours fund these migrant shelters. So they really should be focusing more on helping Americans to come and do a press conference saying that we're going to give American citizens $750 when you see people who are citizens of other countries, right, receiving so much more in taxpayer money, whether it's city, state, or federal. The Democrats need to get it together, stop spending our money on people who entered this country illegally, and focus on the needs of American citizens. We've seen this before. We saw it in Maui. We saw it in Ohio with the train derailment that happened there.
East Palestine.
Exactly. And now we're seeing another third emergency taking place.
You make such a great point, and we talked with Congressman Stubbe earlier this morning, and he called it un-American, is what we're seeing. He said because Americans aren't getting the money that they need and the help they need from FEMA during these last two storms, and what you're saying is it's being given instead for this migrant crisis that this administration created. So what's the solution to this?
The solution is to get a new administration, quite frankly, that's going to prioritize American citizens and our needs. That money is meant there for emergencies that American citizens face, whether it be natural disasters, whether it be a terrorist attack. And I know all too well about these disasters coming from New York. I lived through 9/11, but also my district was particularly devastated after Hurricane Sandy, and it took a long time, and that was under the Obama administration. It took a long time to recover and rebuild. And that's why local elected officials like me, even though I'm here in New York, we're putting a collection together as well, all the Staten Island elected officials with Borough President Vito Fossella, so we can send supplies down to support our colleagues in North Carolina and Georgia and Florida now.
Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned, I mean, this situation right now, I mean, clearly this is, they took some criticism here for Hurricane Helene, but you just brought up three really good examples. You had Maui, you had East Palestine, and then the hurricane that we just had in North Carolina. But should there be something better here? I know you said new administration, but should we be looking at FEMA in a different way? Should it be expanded? Maybe not financially, but adding more people to it that are part of the government. Is that something that's in the cards? I know it's been talked about.
I think instead of adding more bureaucracy, we should actually limit its mission and say it should be focused on recovery and emergency disasters, natural disasters facing American citizens. There's no reason why FEMA should be entering, transporting, and housing migrants who have come over our border by paying the drug cartels. And then it adds insult to injury when you learn that many of these people are criminals. They could be terrorists. We've caught hundreds of those in our interior or at the border. We had a murderer walking around New York who had killed 23 people in his home country of Peru. People shot at police, raped girls, and they're going back to these shelters that are being funded by the taxpayers, whether it's by New York City residents or federal residents. And they talk about these different pots of money. Well, this FEMA money was for migrants and this FEMA. That's nonsense. It's all one pot. It's your wallet. It's the American people's money, and that's who this money should be benefiting.
And to that point, I mean, with FEMA, it takes a long time for it to get the resources to these places that are impacted by disaster. But when it comes to illegals, they get it immediately, the money. You know, the money's sent right to the hotels. They get the credit cards. They get a bus ticket to the city they want to go to, right?
All of a sudden, there's urgency. And this administration should treat the disasters that American citizens face with the same urgency that they have treated this migrant crisis that they created. The difference is they created this migrant crisis by 60 executive orders. This natural disaster came on its own, right? It was an act of God. Unfortunately, we are facing that, and it was nobody's fault. But the migrant crisis could be undone today if they just roll back the 60 executive orders that they put in place on day one. Literally, people that are catching at the border that are murderers, rapists, are being arrested by Customs and Border Protection and directed by this administration to be released into the interior. And then now they come to New York City. We're housing them in these hotels at taxpayer expense. That should not be. It's an issue of prioritizing and urgency. And unfortunately, this administration has failed on both fronts.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here. We are going to take live right now Governor Ron DeSantis.